Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We have a really good show, and I'm having technical difficulties already. Just to already set the stage so you know how things are going to go. Everything's frozen up on me. Kaylin, do you see? Oh God, I don't know what to do. Everything's frozen. I can't see who's in the chat. I can't see Kaylin. All right. I think I'm gonna have to. I'm so sorry, guys. I think I'm gonna have to pause this for one quick. Don't do me a favor. Don't go anywhere. Sit tight. We will figure this out. Just give me one quick second. There. Can you see me now? Can you hear me now? Notice anything different, everybody? I gotta tell you guys, the amount of planning, the amount of effort, the amount of nerves that we went through to make that transition for you all work, you're not even going to believe. But what do you think, everybody? This is the brand new background that we had worked on nearly 12 hours straight to get it all worked out perfectly. A little bit of a work in progress. I think there's still some flair that we want to put up on the walls, maybe some other tchotchkes we want to put up on the shelves back there and everything. But this is it for a while, folks. This is what you're going to be staring at. I think it's a lot more pleasant than what we had before, our hanging shelves and our sad little plant. But if you see, can you see? He's still there. He's still making a cameo. We just couldn't get rid of our little guy. We'll have to give him a nickname. Anyhow, thank you everybody for being here. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential. We have, other than the tomfoolery at the beginning, we really do have a very good show for you tonight, because we've got a very special guest who is Scott from Recovery Addict, who is here to talk to us about the Raul Valle case, a really interesting trial that's going on right now that Scott has been following on a day-by-day basis, that involves a stabbing, a bunch of young kids. I call them kids. They're not even fully past the age of majority. Raul stabbed another young man, killed him. He's on trial for first-degree murder now. It's a self-defense case. There's a lot of really interesting elements to jump into on that one when we will break it all down with Scott. But as always, we like to run our poll. So here's the poll for this evening, and you guys get to pick what we talk about with the remaining time. We either talk about Sean Combs, everybody's rested. They're going to have opening or closing arguments. His defense didn't call any witnesses. We could talk about that. What is the strategy behind that? Is it a good strategy? Is it a bad strategy? What are they going to be talking about during closing arguments? We can talk about Bryan Kohberger. There's been a couple of new witnesses subpoenaed out of Pennsylvania. What do those people mean? Also, what's the latest on the motion to continue? We could talk about that. Or Karmelo Anthony, which is the case out of Texas where, again, another young man stabbed another man. This was the case that took place on at a track meet. Again, a self-defense case, but now he's been indicted for first-degree murder. So that was a recent update on that. Those are your cases: Sean Combs, Bryan Kohberger, or Karmelo Anthony. But first, we're going to speak with Scott. And before we do that, as always, stay to the end. We do have some announcements for you guys. Before we get Scott on here, please like this. Please subscribe. Please share this with everyone. Let's get the algorithm going. And please welcome my very good friend. Hello there. How are you?
Josh, it's great to be here. I love how you keep tabs on everything true crime related. Like if something's happening, I know you're going to be talking about it.
It is rough. We feel spread thin sometimes. We do honestly sometimes go, is that something we need to be talking about? Because you know this probably better than anybody. even without the headline making ones, there are really fascinating cases taking place all over the country all the time.
Yeah. And some are happening in empty courtrooms. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy to think that, you know, your favorite case you'll never hear about
Yeah.
because there's no camera there because nobody knows.
My entire career as a prosecutor was to empty courtrooms. I would put on trials, murder trials, incredibly complex, incredibly fascinating stuff. Like if you were, you know, I can think of trials right now I've done that if they had cameras in the courtroom, you'd be like, that was a fascinating trial, to an empty courtroom. The only one there is maybe a victim's family member or two, maybe not, sadly, in most cases, or, you know, an officer or two, or somebody from your office who's just waiting for you to finish up so they could go to lunch with you. And that was about it. That's who you would do a trial in front of.
Times are changing. They're changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get more of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it looks like it too. More and more courtrooms are videotaping just to have it on a stream, not even because court TV or somebody's requesting it, just to have it available.
Yeah. I love the transparency. I think it's headed in the right direction as long as we treat it nice. They won't take it away. We want to be able to have nice things, and this is one of them. So
treat it nice and treat the people involved like they're actually human beings and not just characters on some sitcom that we're watching. And some stuff tends to get a little ugly sometimes. Some stuff gets a little borderline, not realizing these people have real lives. But none of that is happening on the cases we're going to be talking about tonight. Raul Valle. What's happening with this thing? I gave the very slimmest of introductions. Could you kind of catch us up to what took place on this case? And I'm not going to quiz you, but tell me what you know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot of people are asking what's going on with this case. This case in Connecticut, they don't have opening statements. So you basically get thrown in with, here's your first witness. And so unless you've done the research or follow the news stories, a lot of people are like, why is this case here? What's happened? What's the argument? What's the story? You know, what are they building to? So it's been a different one to watch on that front. But this is a sad case, as most murder cases are, because it involves underage kids. Where both the victims and the defendant were, 16, 17 years old at the time. And these are high school kids. There's some high school rivalry. They're, members of different teams. They played lacrosse, they played football. And there was a fair amount of underage drinking. That seems to be like the underlying theme throughout this. And a lot of people say that's high school. That's kids will be kids. That's what happens. But it started with a fight. With people going from one party to another party and thinking they were invited and think they could show up, and somebody didn't think they should be there, and they fought over the beer, and then they left and went to another party, and that fight sort of spilled over to the last party, and it ended with one kid pulling a knife. And we've got one James McGrath, who passed away, and we've got three other partygoers, attendees, who were stabbed and injured in various degrees. The other three survived, but now you've got Raul Valle on trial for murder. And he's I think, we don't know, but I think he's saying this is self-defense.
He's on trial for murder and looking at a considerable amount of time, right?
Yeah, like up to like 60 years. And he turned down plea deals. He had 40-year plea deals, and he turned those down.
But that's kind of my first point. 40 years is a tremendous amount of time. For a murder case, in just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm coming from, how I'm calibrating this in my head. In California, first degree murder is 25 to life. Maybe if they're with a weapon allegation, maybe you add 10 years. So now you're talking 35 to life. They're already offering him 40 years. I mean, that's like what you would do against someone that you like. This is an actual murderer. And to me, I'm not trying to downplay the loss of life at all. I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of it at all. But this does not ring of, this is a killer who this is his first kill and he's going to go out and kill again, right?
Right. This is somebody who maybe had a little bit to drink, made a very poor decision, got a little fired up, and things spun out of control. And it's tragic. I mean, we've got families that are, and individuals who are devastated, whose lives will never be the same. But Connecticut, 16, 17 years old, you kill somebody, you're tried as an adult. That's what they do. And so we've got this young guy who should be, going to college and enjoying his first few years of college, now facing what appears to be nearly a lifetime in prison if he's convicted. And it's a tough case to follow, honestly, because everybody who went just looks like a kid who just came out of high school, right? They're all this happened back in 2022, so a few years ago, but they all look young, like they haven't started life. Most of them are not really mature. They don't know how to behave in court. They don't understand the respect, the decorum. So you get a lot of like high school type attitude and behavior on the witness stand. But everyone's just telling, this is what I saw that night. And mostly went to a party. So I had these people there. We drank. There was a fight, and nobody's telling the full story.
Yeah,
like everyone, and I think this is because there are some pretty hefty civil cases all wrapped up in this, as you can imagine. But nobody wants to say anything that would make their friends look bad. And so the most common answer we get is, I don't recall. I don't recall. I don't recall.
You know, you get the question a lot of times from people following cases, like why, you know, they see something, and I'm not saying that necessarily applies in this case, but they see something where a person's kind of obviously guilty and they go, well, why are they going to trial? Like, why are they wasting everyone's time? Well, this case, to get back to his plea offer again, is exactly why. This is a young man, barely 18 years old now, right? I think he was 17 at the time of the crime, barely 18 years old. Am I wrong?
I think he's older. I think he's 19 or 20.
So I'm saying he's 19 or 20 now, but at the time of the crime, he's 17,
16. Right?
Yep. Or 16. 17. Okay. My God.
His birthday was right around when all this happened.
Not even fully framed brain or any formed brain or anything yet. Looking at 40 years in prison, of course he's going to go. Let me just, I can't get worse. I can't, 40 years, 60 years. What does it matter to me if I'm going away? As far as he's concerned, you're talking about nearly twice the life he's already lived that he's going to go to prison. So it's like, why not take your chances? Anyhow, that's just kind of an aside. Yeah. One question I had for you that I'm trying to dissect, as a juror, how are they going to view this? Because this is going to come down to a self-defense or first-degree murder situation. Have we heard about the autopsy and the injuries? Do we know how bad the stab wounds were?
We've heard about the injuries. We don't have a weapon. The knife was never found. They did a lot of searching, metal detecting, dogs, everything else. They've tried a lot of, flew drones, but they don't have the weapon. By all accounts, it was a knife that fit in the hand. I think I've got something close to this. Let's see. Here we go. I've got one. So this is a little Scottish knife, but it's a knife that's smaller than this. This is a little dirk that Scottish people wear in their, not a dirk, a skin do, but about a 3-inch blade. So think of 3 thumbs long, and just a small knife like that, a pocket knife.
Yeah,
was all it was.
Okay, and so not like a K-bar that you may have heard about a K-bar recently. We're talking about a much smaller kind of knife that somebody.
A K-bar is like the Rambo knife compared to a little pocket knife. It's a little bit different, but it's enough to puncture a rib cage. It's enough to go into the puncture a heart.
It's deadly for sure.
It was, yeah. But in this case, the jury looking at this, they obviously have to use the law, the Connecticut law, to look at self-defense. And Connecticut is a little different. Connecticut is not one of the 38 states that has a right to stand your ground. Basically, if you're attacked, you can defend yourself. You can use deadly force. Those restrictions are very tight in Connecticut. There's actually a requirement to try to retreat, to try to escape, to try to get away. And that's going to be a big issue for the defense, because as the facts come out, it appears that Raul sort of sought this out and followed the fight, and was looking for a knife before the fight started, and that's obviously the jury's going to hear that, and that can't sit well with them at all.
Yeah, the evidence I heard today, I think, is really going to come down to the clincher in this case, and I want to get into that, but I ask again about the injuries, because do you remember the Nikolai Mew case from a while back? This was the Apple River stabbing with that older gentleman who was out on the river. There was a bunch of kids partying. Some altercation breaks out. He's got a pocket knife on him, and he uses it to stab someone. But to me, one of the difference makers, and thank you so much, Farm Girl, for gifting the membership. Really appreciate you. One of the difference makers in that case, and he was convicted for murder. He's in prison now for murder. Was the extent of and the I guess what you would call the type of the injuries, because these were not stab wounds or slashing wounds, as you might expect from somebody kind of trying to defend himself. But if you remember from that trial, the Nikolai Mew trial, there was one gentleman who survived who had a scar from his navel to between his chest cavity. It was as if he was trying to gut these people, like he was trying to open them up. And that's why I'm wondering, like, are the injuries in this case similar, or are they multiple stab wounds, or do we know yet?
They're small punctures. It was used as a a direct blow into the body. Two of them sustained chest, one under the armpit. It could have punctured a lung, collapsed a lung. The gentleman who passed away it went right to his heart area, and he collapsed just seconds later. But it was just like stabs. Like, imagine a punch, but you're using the flat of your hand where the knife's protruding. Some got a couple in the thigh, one in the the flank area, the chest. One gentleman sort of got a slice across the arm right around the elbow. That this was probably like in a flail sort of thing. It wasn't a direct stab, but
So the evidence I heard, okay, so that's one thing. It sounds like the injuries could be argued either way. One, he's stabbing at everybody, which is not good for him. But two, if his attorneys are probably going to argue that, like, listen, these don't have intent to kill behind them. These have intent to defend behind them. There's at least an argument to be made for that. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying an argument to be made.
He has a couple good points on his side. First of all, he showed up with his shirt pulled over his head like Beavis and Butthead style, being silly and asking for somebody's name. And somebody attacked him and ripped his shirt off his head, and he got punched first twice. So he did not start it there, but he did sort of start the fight previously and then followed to this one.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people. This whole fight lasted about a minute. It's recorded on one video camera that somebody filmed it a little bit, and it's just a few seconds of just mayhem. It's just like people running all over the place, and you can't really tell anything. I don't think we could even see who was stabbed where, but there's confusion about what happened as far as when did he get the knife? Did he run to his car and get the knife, or did he, run to the car and put the knife in there? Nobody knows when it happened. There's some conflicting evidence from the different party goers. I think he's got a shot at arguing self-defense, and the thing that's going to help him the most is that the witnesses that are testifying against him for the prosecution seem to be shady, like they're hiding something.
Yeah.
And I think a jury might come out and say, I just don't think I'm getting the truth, and I'm not ready to convict on that.
And that's a good point. That's what they should do. If they feel like they don't have the full story, and they feel like they are not fully, they are not being given enough by the prosecution to know that they know the truth, that should default to not guilty. You're right. The evidence, though, that I heard today that was disturbing to me from the perspective of his defense, and Penn Twofold, thank you so much, says, guilty or not guilty, this kid needs a rehabable, seems a rehabable defendant. Young, drinking, fighting, hormones, chaos, brain not developed, no violent history, 40 years as a crime. I agree with that. I listen, and again, there's a young man who lost his life, and there's a family out there who will never have a son, and that is horrible. And 40 years or not, they are never going to recover from that pain, and I get it. But that's not what our system is about. It's also about using, being just in sentencing. And 40 years is just, to me, I've seen gang member commit horrible gang murders who didn't get 40 years. And so this is just kind of shocking to me that was his offer. But putting that aside, thank you, Pantufel, for that question. The witness I heard about today was a young man by the name of Keenan Razik. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And by the way, I'm pronouncing it Valle. I've heard Valle. I've heard in the court they say sometimes Valle and sometimes not. Thank you, CJ, for the membership. I'm going to call it, I'm just going to say Valle or Valle, and everybody yell at me. Now, just keep everybody equally upset. He said he was inside the vehicle. So there, like you said, there was one fight Then later on, they're in a vehicle and they come back and there's a second fight. So I don't even know if you can argue the two are related, maybe heated kind of already heated tensions, but they come back and Keenan's in the car and he says that Raul Valle starts to look around for a weapon, starts to rummage through the center console, starts to rummage through the glove box, looking for a knife. And he says, "Jack, where is your knife?" referring to another young man in the car named Jack Snyder, who is the driver. That's what we would call a bad fact for him, because that seems as though he's trying to arm himself in anticipation of some sort of fight that's about to take place, which now you're starting to put together the elements of premeditation.
Yeah. You have to realize, though, the defense can come out and argue that he did this after his car was surrounded, was just being rocked. They were pelting it. They smashed the window. They're calling them out. There were people that were scared inside the car. And so there's an argument to be made of defense of self and defense of others, worrying that they're in a life-threatening situation. So depending on how this story comes out, and I think he's going to have to take the stand. Obviously, self-defense, he has to assert that somehow. And I think he has to tell his story. And if he can come out and tell it and come across as being truthful and fully truthful, whereas the witnesses that have given us testimony so far have shared bits and pieces, but also held some back, it seems. I think there's a chance that it might resonate with the jury and they'll give him a break.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was kind of the next point I was going to get into. And I am a firm believer that there's very few cases where a defendant should ever take the stand. But one category in particular is self-defense cases. I feel like those are unique because they are, first of all, a complete defense, meaning if they find that person was using self-defense according to the law, they walk. So, we're not talking like a mitigating defense. We're talking a complete defense. And for the point that you just made, if you're going to make that defense, I feel like jurors need to hear it from you, and they need to believe you. They need to believe that you were in fear, that you were just trying to do your best, that you were without other options. And as much as your attorney can argue that, and as much as you might even have witnesses and evidence to support it, I feel like you almost need to make that personal plea to the jury and hear it from them. And then you're absolutely right. It's going to come down to, do they believe this young man? He still has to be believable.
Yeah. They still have to look at this and say, did he use reasonable force? Was it reasonable to believe that he was, in fear for his life or, a loved one's life? That's going to be tough. When you look at the other facts and the fighting and the peacocking that they were doing back and forth, the text messages and the previous fight, you got to weigh all of that in. But it's going to be, it's a fascinating case. It progresses slowly because we're hearing literally the same testimony from a different vantage point over and over and over, because there were so many people there. And each time we get a little bit or a tidbit or a bit of information we're putting together. And hopefully at the end of this, we'll have a complete picture of how it goes. But I think we've got another few days, maybe as much as a week left in this trial. It's not going to be, a multi-month trial at all. But I think we're going to see the defendant take the stand for sure.
That would be, I think that would be the wise thing to do, even though it's against all usual traditional kind of strategic thinking. I think it might be the wise thing to do in this case. And to your point too, it's all about reasonableness. So they have to hear if he was reasonable in his perception of the threat, in his belief that he had to use deadly force. But it's funny in these self-defense cases too, it sometimes comes down to split seconds, because it's not so much you're right. He's being surrounded in a car. So the idea of him arming himself, maybe not entirely damning of him, right? The prosecutor's going to argue that's premeditation. The defense is going to say the guy's scared to death. He's trying to protect himself. So it could go both ways. The crucial thing is going to come down to the moment he pulls the knife and starts using it. Do all of those elements of reasonableness, and as you point out in Connecticut, the idea that he had taken steps to flee or not use force in those crucial, microseconds, does that apply? And I think they're going to have to hear that from him.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's going to weigh in or not, but Connecticut has some strict laws about knives, especially underage people carrying knives. And if the knife is the right category, and 3 inches or smaller, it would have been legal for him to have this knife on him. So it wouldn't have been a crime. If it was a stiletto knife or an automatic knife or a switchblade or something, it would have been illegal, and anything over 3 inches would have been illegal for somebody under the age of 21 there. So
I think if you're the prosecutor, I think if you're the prosecutor, if it was illegal, you say, and by the way, he's also got an illegal knife on him. But if it was legal, I think you say doesn't matter. The idea is he's bringing a knife to a fist fight, and he's the only one using it, and he wasn't being confronted in that moment with deadly force, and he responded with deadly force, and that's unreasonable, and that's why he's guilty of murder.
There may even be some consciousness of guilt with him getting rid of the knife. There's a lot of arguments that might come out here in closings. So I'm really
which brings me back to Nikolai Mew again. He got rid of the knife and lied to police, which caused him a lot of trouble. Do you have some time to take some questions here from some of our viewers?
Yeah.
Joe Schmo, hello, my friend, says the defense is doing a pretty good job of getting the other young men to contradict each other on cross. I definitely am leaning towards reasonable doubt / self-defense at this point. Do you think, are you seeing it the same way?
I think defense is doing a great job. This is a great attorney. He's got a unique style. He's wearing like a giant skull ring on his hands. It's just an interesting look. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just haven't seen that in court before. But he's able to cross-examine these witnesses, and he pushes, not like really aggressively, but enough that there's usually objections that are sustained. And he pushes pretty hard and calls out the differences and says, "Okay, you don't remember this? Do you often in your daily conversations say, I don't recall. That gets sustained on objection. But he's pointing out the fact that something's wrong here and it doesn't seem right. The stories aren't matching up. You told somebody else something else different at a different time. And I think that's adding up points on his side that he's going to be able to use, obviously, in closing and maybe in his case as well.
I actually was watching your channel, and he was asking this young man about the him looking for the knife, and then it was unclear as to where Valle was actually seated, and then it became like an issue, like, well, then is he crawling over the front seat to get into the glove box? And that's when he asked one of those questions that you're kind of referencing, where he said, was this like a standard vehicle where they have the glove box in front of the passenger, or was this I like
that was a funny, you've got the story just didn't add up at that point. You've got a witness who was in the car saying, I was in the back seat and Valle was next to me on one side or the other. And then I saw him, rummaging through the glove box. I'm like, whoa, the glove box is the front seat. He's like, how did he do that? He's got, first of all, he's in the back seat. He's got a girl who's sitting on his lap because they've got 7 people in this Honda Pilot. One guy's sitting in like the trunk space as well. And he's able to rummage through the glove box and the center console looking for a knife. And he's like, make this make sense to me because your story isn't adding up. So there've been a few moments like that have been good. And somebody's not telling the truth or just remembers it wrong.
Well, and sometimes that's enough too for the defense, is just showing like, listen, the prosecution wasn't able to give you one person who could tell a straight story. Like, if you can't believe different parts from each witness, then you can't believe the whole. Like, if this house of cards is built with a bunch of bad cards, it's gonna fall. Like, every one of them's got a problem. I don't know. It sounds like he's doing a pretty good job. Lee T says, how many people were stabbed and how many survived? Do we know like the total number of people involved in the fight?
No. Everyone is saying that they know what they saw or what they did, and that's it. They're not throwing their friends under the bus, but we know that 4 people were stabbed. James McGrath was the only one who passed away. He was stabbed once in the chest. He basically, walked around for a bit, stood up, looked at his shirt, lifted it up, and just collapsed and never regained consciousness. But the others, stabbed multiple times. One of the collapsed lung, probably one of the most serious. But some of the wounds were deep enough that they had to be kept open for weeks, trying to clean them out and everything. 3 injured though, and all 3 of them have testified, as well as their doctors.
These cases it is so sad how sometimes what you think might be a minor injury ends up taking somebody's life. I remember I had a case where a man was stabbed in the leg and continued to fight, and it didn't appear as though the leg injury was all that bad. Like, he was a big burly guy, but got his femoral artery, and he just he didn't realize it, but the second he got stabbed, he needed to be rushed to the hospital immediately, and maybe they could have saved his life, but he stayed involved in the fight, didn't think it was all that bad. It's not, it didn't look like that horrible of a wound, but it just continued to bleed out, and he eventually died. It's just really sad how those sometimes not all that horrific looking injuries can be fatal.
Yeah. This is a tough one. There's some light moments in this, but first of all, everybody had 2 beers, right? That's the standard answer. Nobody knows where they came from. Everyone's like, where'd the beer come? I don't know. It's the beer fairy brought it to the party. But that's the standard answer, that, it isn't telling the truth. Some people's blood alcohol content just doesn't match up with having 2 beers and all that. But clearly, I think that the moral we can walk away from is that underage drinking is terrible. You got kids who have, even sober, have a hard time making good decisions, and alcohol just doesn't help at all.
Last question on this. We've kind of covered all the other questions that I've seen in one way or another, but Flora Paris, thank you so much, says, how do you claim self-defense when you go and get the knife? And I'm not exactly posing that question to you, but this is basically going to be the prosecution's closing arguments. The defense will be, it sounds like you can't believe anybody, and he was in fear for his life. Do we know when closing arguments are going to take place? Does it seem like it's wrapping up?
I'm guessing probably the end of next week would be my guess, but I do expect to hear the phrase, he brought a knife to a fist fight. He was the only one with a weapon. Nobody else had anything. And that's, it's hard to overlook that. Were you really worried about are you really in danger of your life when it was really just a tussle? With, a kid broke his nose. There's a couple scuffs on the head, but I don't know how they tell the story and if the jury believes it.
There actually was one more question. I lied when I said last question, because there was one more question that I had missed, and I thought, oh, here it is. Can't think of a better name. Well, that's a great name. Can't think of a better name. Says, can Raul possibly get a guilty verdict on a lesser included? And I don't know if they've talked about that in this case specifically, but I imagine, like most jurisdictions, it's going to operate that the judge will, it's called sua sponte, instruct the jury on all instructions that may be applicable here. So first degree looks like what the prosecution's going in with, but second degree could apply. Some sort of manslaughter could apply. Has any of that been discussed?
Not in open court. All we've got is just basically, welcome to court. Here's your first witness. So we sort of thrown in on the deep end. It's a funny way to watch, but it really makes you feel like the jury, knowing nothing going into it. So I imagine that will come at the closing or in the jury instructions. We're going to hear about that.
Yeah, and I can't imagine, and I think that's probably a way that it might end up too. I mean, as much as this kid has a argument towards self-defense, and it sounds like his defense attorney has done a good job, it's hard for jurors to let somebody walk out the door when a young man lost his life, and when he lost his life in a way that is easily presentable. I've seen a lot of questions and comments tonight for people saying, he could have walked away. Why didn't he walk away? Why didn't he run? Why didn't he do 1,000 different other things other than stab somebody? Ivan Victor, thank you so much, says, I vote not guilty. 10-on-1 is just as much a weapon as a knife. Well, that's an excellent argument as well, and I'm sure something very similar will be argued by his attorney. So
I think we're going to see on defense closing a very different story, a different picture painted, where what we've been told all along in this trial is not the whole picture, and I think it'll surprise us even how much it's like, okay, now this is making sense. I think this defense attorney is very good. I think they've got a solid plan. I think what they're going to present to the jury is something the jury can follow along step by step and not be lost and say, okay, that was reasonable. He did try to leave. The driver took him there without his permission or without knowing. He didn't ask to go there, and they just showed up. And he got out of the car, because he wanted to get away. And they ran to him. I think they're going to be able to spin the story in a way that the jury could look at the facts and come to a reasonable conclusion in his favor as well.
And I think if he does testify, it'll all come down to him then. Because like everything you just said, the reasonableness of it, coming back to what would they do in his position? Well, they're going to have to hear it out of his mouth. So I think the more you talk to me about it, the more I think it might even be a mistake to not call him. Yeah. Anyhow, Scott, you are an absolute gentleman, and I appreciate. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this case. Before I let you go, everybody who's here, if you're not already a Recovery Addict subscriber, which I'm sure most of you already are, but if you're not, do yourself a favor and follow it. Scott follows trials in a way different and better, I think, than anybody on YouTube with all of the interactive stuff. Are you able to show us your station there? Can we?
Yeah, we can do that. This is where I'm at right here.
I love it. I am feeling super high tech with the new setup we've got, and I've got a maybe 1/3 of what your desk looks like right now.
I will tell you, I got an Amazon shipment today with some more equipment, and one other one coming tomorrow with some more mics and stuff. It's an addiction in and of itself.
This is your little control
awesome.
Panel. You're at the deck of the Enterprise.
I'm pretty much, I could launch a spaceship from here if I know the right buttons to push. Josh, it is great to be here. Thank you very much. I love the invite.
Thank you, my friend. Anything you got coming up you want to tell people about? You're covering this trial, and then is it just kind of pivot and see what else is going on?
We've got a couple small ones coming up, well, bigger ones. Adelson obviously is happening. We've got Corey Richens was supposed to be this summer. That got bumped off into February next year. Brian Kohberger, believe it or not, is just around the corner with an August 11th.
It is. Yeah. It's crazy.
So we'll probably be following a few smaller cases, and then Kohberger is probably going to be our next big one, depending on how Adelson goes.
Wow. All right. Thank you again, my friend. You're fantastic. It was so good to see you. It's been too long. We'll have to make this happen again soon.
Awesome. Anytime. Thanks, Josh.
All right. Take care, buddy. All right. Thank you for that. The nice comments and everybody wishing well to Scott. Should we take a look at our poll? I think I have a sneaking suspicion of who won, but I don't want to release the results and get into run afoul of the election loss. So I'm going to wait until I see the official announcement in our chat here. Oh, but while we do that, Kay Schmidt gifted 5 Courtroom Confidential memberships. So thank you so much, Kay Schmidt. That's so nice of you. And here we go. Kaylin says 58% for Kohberger. Good. We are all in on this case, and I've been following it very closely, even the little updates. And there was a little update on this case that is kind of interesting, and I've got a hot take on it that you guys might enjoy. So you may have heard a couple of weeks ago. First of all, thank you, Kaylin. As always, we are talking about the tragic loss of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. There has been recently, the things that have been taking place in court is just kind of these last minute wranglings between both sides before they get ready for the trial coming up. And one of the most recent things we've heard about is that these summonses have been, I don't even know if that's the plural of summonsi have been signed by the judge relating to out-of-state witnesses. Raina, thank you so much. Looks like I found another place to watch. Awesome community. Thanks, ROA, for the nudge. Oh, well, very, very nice of you. Thank you, Raina, and thank you, Scott, for sending you over. So we heard about a batch of these that went out a couple weeks ago for some witnesses in Pennsylvania. The witnesses were professors that he had known, a professor who had recommended him for a PhD, a school advisor, a former boxing coach. A lot of these people ended up on a witness list. The interesting thing about this is that we don't know who the subpoenas or summonses are coming from, like which side, defense or prosecution. They're just being signed by the judge. And we don't know what purpose they're being called for. We don't have what's called an offer of proof on any of these people. So journalists, internet sleuths have been trying to figure out who are these people and how do they relate to Bryan Kohberger. And that's how we're finding out who some of them are. Some of the names are more recognizable than others, but the most recent names to come out, and I should say that the prior batch all seems to be related to the penalty phase of the trial, either witnesses called in mitigation or aggravation towards Bryan Kohberger in the jury's ultimate decision, if they get there, of deciding whether or not to give him the death penalty. Elizabeth S., thank you so much for becoming a member. Really appreciate you. So that was a couple of weeks ago. We all thought, okay, these are probably likely character witnesses, either in mitigation or aggravation of him. The most recent are a person by the name of William Searfoss and Anthony Soma. Well, Searfoss is interesting. Let's do Soma first, because Searfoss is more interesting. Anthony Soma is, according to articles online, appears to be someone who attended Monroe Career and Technical Institute, along with, we're guessing, Bryan Kohberger, because he also went there in his youth when he attended the youth law enforcement program at this school. And interestingly, oh, there he is, attempting to do a push-up. He was a heavy-set young man. He lost a lot of weight. If you've read any of the books about him or know about his history, he went through a period where he was really overweight, and then just kind of the switch went on in his life, and he pursued fitness, lost about 100 pounds or so, to the point that he even had to have surgery to have excess skin removed around his stomach. Anyhow, he gets kicked out of this program because of complaints from female classmates. So it's anyone's guess. It sounds like this is a witness that the prosecution might want to call in a potential penalty phase to talk about his history and character towards animosity of young women. I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine, because we don't know exactly what they're going to testify to. They're not in any police reports that we've seen. We've never heard them referred to before, but that to me is kind of an educated guess of who this person would be. The other person's a little more interesting. Not that I'm trying to take away from the interest of Anthony, but William Searfoss is the jail guard where Bryan Kohberger was held before his extradition. When this was initially reported, it was just that he was a jail guard. And I thought, well, he was arrested. You all know this. He was arrested at one point for he had stolen and sold his own sister's phone to support a heroin addiction. And his father decided to report him to the police to try to scare him straight. And he had been arrested and gone through a program, got himself clean, but did have probation. And I thought, oh, maybe that was what it was from that prior arrest. No, this is from when he was arrested in Pennsylvania in connection to this case. And he was held in Pennsylvania for a period of time before extradition. This person, William Searfoss, was a guard there. Now, why is that interesting to me? Well, one, there were reports that while he was being held in custody, that he was shouting and threatening guards. The warden of that jail has since said that is not true. So however you want to fall on that, either good reporting or bad reporting, or the warden's covering up for something, who knows? Could be that. And again, I'm not trying to be sensational here, and this is all speculation, and I will give that warning up front. But in my experience, you call jail guards to either talk about violence, and they're saying that's not true. You know, he attacked other people while he was in custody, or he attacked guards or something like that. Or it's for things they overheard him talking about. And that to me might even be more interesting. Was he talking about, because these guys, by the way, when they get locked up, they cannot help themselves. They are cut off from the world. They're confused. They're panicked, and they're trying to talk to anybody. And in their attempts to pump the guards for information, what am I being arrested for? What am I being held here for? Wait a minute, they're going to extradite me back to Idaho? Does this have to do with those girls in the dorm room, in that those college kids? Does this have to do with that? It might be something as simple as that. It might be something as easy as he volunteered information that only somebody, suspected of this would say. Again, I'm speculating. I have no idea. Don't come at me if I'm completely wrong on all of this, but I thought that's very interesting, because who knows what this guard could have overheard? Who knows what conversations this guard could have had with him? I will say, in complete transparency, I did see an interview that was done with the guard's wife where she says we have no idea why he's being called. But the latest on all of this is that on June 30th, which is 5 days from now, all these people, not all of them, the ones who want to contest it, will be in court in Pennsylvania. So the way this works with these out of court or out of state subpoenas is you get the home state to basically request of the foreign state, we would like to have this person brought in by a subpoena. In the foreign state, they then have to serve them with a subpoena. It's a subpoena to show up to a court, not in Idaho, but to show up to a court in Pennsylvania. You show up to a court in Pennsylvania and you explain to the judge there why you don't feel that you should have to go to Idaho. In order to have that hearing, though, if you think about this logically, there has to be someone who's asking for the subpoena there to argue why you should. So it could be that at this June 30th hearing, we might find out more about these witnesses, what they're being called for, who wants to call them, and all of this speculation of mine could prove true or be thrown right out the window. The other way this could work out, though, is the judge could close the hearing on all of that, because these are people who have private lives. And if the judge does decide to not have them go all the way to Idaho and testify, he probably doesn't want to blow up their life completely. So that's interesting kind of development in that case. Tio Toys says BK is not invited to your party. I was, though. Scott and I are invited to your party, so I appreciate that. And we'll be there. Just tell us what to bring. Don't tell me to bring chips and beer, though. Just tell me, like, do you want a baked good or something? Let me know. Barb Russell says, are guards allowed to speak about what goes on behind bars? Aren't they like bailiffs and aren't supposed to talk? Not quite sure what your reference is to bailiffs. I mean, bailiffs are not supposed to communicate with jurors about their deliberations or communicate, their feelings about the case to jurors. If that's kind of what you're referencing, but no, guards are witnesses. Guards are law enforcement. Guards get called all the time for things they overheard, for things that took place in jail. Yeah, I've called guards on people who have been in custody for a long period of time, because things happen, things get admitted, conversations are had. So yeah, there's no protections here at all. The last place on earth that you have any reasonable expectation of privacy is going to be inside a jail cell. And Irish Princess asks, are they going to still go ahead with the firing squad if he is found guilty? My understanding is not only are they going to go ahead with it, they have actually been constructing a new facility for it, which is rather incredible if you think about it, that they felt like the place where they were going to shoot and kill people to death needed renovations. I'm going to put all of my comments I can make on that aside. But yes, the state of Idaho still does have the death penalty. The state of Idaho does intend to use the death penalty. And there was some litigation regarding the use of chemicals, but doing it by lethal injection and whether or not they had the proper chemicals or could get their hands on it. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to change the laws. We're going to allow for the death penalty to be also enacted through firing squad. And they're going to, my understanding is they plan on being ready almost entirely for this gentleman right here, if he is found guilty. So more specifically, to answer your question, Irish Princess, found guilty and in the penalty phase found to be worthy of, or be have committed a crime heinous enough to be given the greatest penalty that we have in this country of the death penalty. All right, I think we actually have some time to move on. Do we have a second place prize on this, Kalen? I'm going to catch Kalen off guard, but we've got a few more minutes left, and then I'll get into some announcements and let you guys all go. By the way, do we get any? What was the reaction to our little transition video there? Was that clever enough? Did we catch you off guard? Did anybody notice? I was saying ahead of time, the worst reaction we're going to get from people is if they say, "Oh, I didn't even notice that he changed the background at all." But we did it a lot of updating around here. We did we are going fully as high tech as Courtroom Confidential can go in our little biplane redlining it the entire way. Kaylin says 29% for Karmelo Anthony coming in second place. But if you guys like the new background, let us know. If you have some further suggestions, let us know. I'm going to kind of give you the whole room. See, this is where I sit and I read all my true crime books, and then I put them over there on the shelf. This is just my little reading room, and you're joining me for a little cozy chat. Afton, hey, how we've missed you as well. Good to see you. All right, so Karmelo Anthony, another horrible case involving young people killing each other. Well, the latest is in this case, if you don't know about this, thank you, Pammy. I love all the new things. I missed the joke with the transition. That's good. Go back and watch it. We worked on it hard. Please go back and watch it. This is a really, really sad case. This young man that you're looking at right here is, his name is Austin Metcalf, and he lost his life at the age of 17. This took place in Texas. The date was April 2nd of this year. And the story goes that they're at a track meet. And you know how each of these schools at a track meet will have those pop-up tents. And it sounds like Karmelo Anthony was from a different school and was sitting under the tent. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know if he was just resting or maybe I don't know. I mean, we don't know much more other than he was at the tent and he was asked to leave by Austin. And they get into it. And the depending on which version you go with, Austin and other bystanders are saying that Austin asked him several times to leave. Maybe that turned more heated. And then as he goes to tell him, "Hey, man, you really need to go," and we're not quite sure how physical that got, if at all, Karmelo turns on him with a knife, stabs him in the chest, and Austin dies there. And my understanding is in his brother's own arms. Horrible nightmare of a case. Karmelo takes off running. He's eventually apprehended. And the first words out of his mouth to law enforcement was, "I was protecting myself." And then he says, "Is he going to be okay?" However you want to feel about that. This case, I know, evokes a lot of strong feelings in a lot of different people. I think anytime young people lose their lives over something this silly and stupid is complete tragedy. And I do think this young man does need to be held accountable. Someone lost their life. But again, it comes down to kind of the situation we were talking about before. How much of that? What does that mean? Well, according to a recent indictment, the grand jury out of Texas has indicted him for first-degree murder. So it sounds like whatever evidence exists that the grand jury knows about, they believe that is enough to prove some sort of premeditation. And what I'm hearing, but I have not been able to confirm it, is that there is other videotape of this. This guy's not invited. Got a really strict list going on over there for Tio Toys. There's videotape that does exist, and the videotape may be the most convincing piece of evidence as far as what took place and how did this stabbing go down. I mean, it's going to be one thing if Austin attacks Karmelo and Karmelo stabs him in response. It's going to be another thing entirely if Austin never lays hands on this young man and he stabs him and kills him, which is just really awful. So again, more young lives. There he is. More young lives lost, more young lives ruined. Young lives, by the way, of the man who's, of Karmelo, life likely ruined, going away to prison for perhaps the rest of his life. Just horrible, horrible stuff from young people who just can't get the ramifications of their actions. DSN says, this is a tragedy. Why on earth are there so many stabbings? I don't know. I don't know why young people are going around with knives, and I don't know why they think it's some sort of a game to use them. So anyhow, let's get into some announcements for the, well, you know what? Let me just give you Sean Combs really quickly. Prosecution and defense have rested. This is the quickest notes you're ever going to hear on this case. Prosecution and defense have rested. Defense put on 0 witnesses. You could look at that a couple of ways. You could say, they're being very strategic. They've proven their case. The burden always rests on the prosecution. They did a good job on their cross-examination, and they are going to make the argument to the jury that we didn't even need to call witnesses because the prosecution has not proven their case. Sure, you could make that, and they likely will make that argument. I think what's actually going on is they don't have any witnesses to call in his defense. Who are they going to call to support this man? Who are they going to call to refute the allegations being made by all these other people? You know what's worse than calling no witnesses? Calling witnesses that are hurtful to you. And so it may come down to just that. It's not an idea of they don't got the money, they don't got the resources, they can't, they don't want to call witnesses. It could come down to they simply don't have witnesses to call. So that's one thing I was thinking about. The other interesting development is that the government has dropped certain charges ahead of time. They are not proceeding on the attempted kidnapping, the attempted arson, and the aiding and abetting on sex trafficking. And the defense and others in support of the defense are saying, this is a win for the defense. Pump the brakes. Not so much. What this is, and the prosecution has said this, is them streamlining their case. This is not dropping charges as much as it's dropping predicate acts. Remember, this is a RICO case. They need underlying crimes to prove that. And they can use as many or as little predicate crimes they can, as long as they have more than one, to prove this. And they're just saying, we're not going to try to ask the jurors to wrap their heads around the attempted arson or the attempted kidnapping, when we've already got a full-fledged kidnapping that we've proven of Cassie, a full-fledged arson that we've proven against Kid Cudi and his Porsche. We don't need these other things. We don't need the small fry stuff to confuse the jurors. We're going to go ahead and just go in with the strongest stuff that we have. So expecting closing arguments on this case to be taking place on Thursday and Friday. That's tomorrow, starting tomorrow. The prosecution's really got to wrap it up as far as tightening how this is a criminal enterprise and not just an individual enterprise. In other words, how is this a case about something closer to the mob than closer to one crazy, powerful, wealthy person doing whatever the heck they want? And for the defense, they're going to try to prove 3 things: consent, consent, consent. This whole case comes down to consent for them. And by the way, doing something willfully, meaning doing it with consent, can include reluctantly, disgustedly, regretfully. All of those things don't mean you did not do it willfully. So bear all that stuff in mind. That is your quickest review of the Sean Diddy Combs case you're ever going to hear. All right, let's get to our announcements, and then I'm going to get you guys out of here because I do have kind of something special for you in our announcements. But first of all, what you missed on Monday, we had our Monday night live special. We're going to be doing that again next week. We're going to go live on Monday nights for a few weeks here in a row while we're working on some other projects. And we had Lauren from Hidden True Crime. There she is. And we talked about the Suzanne Morphew case, the Barry Morphew case. He's been arrested for the murder now of his wife, Suzanne Morphew. Really interesting case. This is going to become one that I think we follow closely because there's a lot of interesting details to get into on this. And one really big breaking detail as far as the toxicology report reveals that he is likely the killer of his own wife. So that was on Monday. It's already up. Please check it out if you guys haven't already. On Saturday, we're doing our weekly roundup as always, but we've got a brand new time for you. It's now going to premiere, a live premiere at 8 a.m. Pacific. It was at 6. Now we moved it back a couple of hours because we're just trying to accommodate putting it at a time that is most convenient for all of you. So it's going to be at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. So everybody on the West Coast, left coast has a little bit more time to sleep in on a Saturday. And then Sunday, what do we do on Sunday, everybody? Let me hear everybody all at once. Sunday Fun Day. As always, this Sunday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern, noon Eastern, we are taking all of your calls, and we're going to be answering them live on Sunday Fun Day. This has become my favorite show. It's a lot of people's favorite show here on Courtroom Confidential. And you say to yourself, Joshua, it sounds great. I just have one question for you, and that is, where in the world do I go to leave you a message? Well, I'm going to show you. You go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, and you click on this tab right over here on the right that says send a voice message. Click on that. This window will pop up, and you leave us a voice message with a true crime question, I guess I should say. So leave us a question about anything dealing with true crime. We get questions about crimes that are decades old. We get questions about crimes that are currently taking place and trials that are currently going on. And they're all fascinating. And I love hearing all of them. And we answer them all live on Sunday Fun Day. And this is also the place where you can go to become a member, learn all about that. We're working hard on that. The place where you can go to our shop, learn all about the merch, including, what am I wearing? Tiffany, what is this? This is one of our brand new Courtroom Confidential t-shirts. What did we call this? Is this seafoam? Light green. Oh, see, not inventive. One of my favorite colors, though, but not an inventive name. I think we got to come up with a better name. So anyhow, that is where you go to find all the good stuff about membership and merchandise and the website. Let me thank some brand new members, and then I'm going to tell you about a special that we have going for CrimeCon coming up. First of all, thank you to T. Duclos, Persephone Applewood, Canoni's Corrupt Court, Christy Royer, A Homicide Detective's Daughter, Donna Herndon, Purple Wolf, Lisa J, Lizzie Boredom, love that one, Lizzie Boredom, Kim Rowland, Tom Vaughn, Renee Meredith, Katrina J, Deb Wilner, Flora Paris, oh, Flora, Mason's Nana, Diana Storm, Salty Sleuth Investigates, and Nathaniel Nate Hansen. And thank you so much, Alexis, for gifting us 5 Courtroom Confidential memberships. Caitlin, did I miss thanking anyone? If I did, please pop it up here now. But thank you, everybody who left super chats and who left, who contributed memberships. And to thank all of you, we spoke to the folks over at CrimeCon. If you are thinking about, if you're on the fence about going to CrimeCon, we would like to push you over the fence and encourage you to go. It's taking place this September between the 5th and the 7th in Colorado, Denver. We are going for sure. In which capacity is yet to be determined, but we will be there. And we spoke to the folks at CrimeCon. We said, we want to give something to our folks. What can we do? So they gave us a discount code. So if you put in the code courtroom in all caps, one word, courtroom, you get a 10% discount at checkout. So takes a little sting out of the whole thing, makes it a little bit more enjoyable. You can use that 10% savings to, I don't know, buy yourself a cocktail or buy yourself some Courtroom Confidential merch, whichever your choosing is. All right, guys, thank you so much for dealing with all of our silliness this evening. Thank you so much for being here. You're all fantastic. Appreciate you all. We will see you all again. Oh, wait a minute. Did we break it? I know we were right on the verge. Oh, at 35,997. We need 3 more subscribers. We'll do it by the time I sign off here. Maybe if I vamp for a minute or two, we can get, if there's 3 people out there who have not subscribed, just do it now so we can all celebrate before I say goodnight. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So close. That's just how it is sometimes. That's how it is in the hard streets of true crime. Sometimes you get close and sometimes it just doesn't happen for you. You guys have all been fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you again on Saturday for the weekly roundup. But most importantly, please don't miss out this Sunday for Sunday Fun Day. You're all fantastic. Have a great, 998. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.